Quick, awesome oil change on a 2015 Passat. Now here's the thing, the 2015 has an oil element, goes inside an oil cap. It's on top of the motor, not underneath. If you have a 2015 Passat Wolfsburg edition with the 1.8 motor, don't go lying around underneath looking for an oil filter. You're never going to find it. Let me show you the most awesome tool you're going to need to do the job. Super cool tool is a 32mm low profile oil filter housing cap socket, and you can read it for yourself. What does this really super cool tool do? This super cool tool loosens this super cool oil cap that goes over the oil filter. Okay, your filter's under there. I've already taken the heat shield off, all right, and your oil filter is going to be found right under there. Okay, number of things online tell you to use something different, try something different, use sockets, all kinds of crazy stuff they tell you. Tell you what, I'm going to show you right now that they are full of hooky. See that? Took it right out. That's what it looks like. It has the proper number of edges on it. We'll apply the proper pressure to the proper points. Okay, has a nice little drive spot there for a socket. You take this little puppy, you put it on top of the cap like that, and you loosen it like you would any other nut or bolt. I'm going to put the ratchet on there in just a second and show you how that works. To be prepared, so what you see here are a few shop towels already pre-torn and laying about so I can grab them when I need them for a quick cleanup. On the floor here I've got my disposal bag with a pair of gloves that I was using earlier already in the bag. So I've got a disposal right next to the vehicle. Okay, there's my heat shield over there. What I have here is a shop towel, very clean. I soiled it just a little bit with some fresh oil from a new bottle of oil. I'm going to show you what that's for in just a minute. Okay. I've got the wrench that I'm going to use on the cap. Now I showed you this cap here. Okay. How much would you guess that thing costs to buy that? And guess where to find it? Because I went everywhere looking for this thing. You know what? Pep Boys, local parts store in my city. Pep Boys had it on the rack with all the other oil wrenches. Right there, ready for you to buy. $10. That's what it was in my city, 10 bucks. Okay? I've got my new oil filter ready to go in. Here's the new one. Now, what's the difference between the new one and the old one? Not a thing. Difference is online, you can't get the right measurements. This is 2 inches across, okay? And it's a little bit more than 4. It's more like 4.5. You look online, no one's going to show you a 2 by 2 by 4.5. Okay? It's actually just a little under 4.5. So if you get yours and it's not quite 4.5, don't freak out. Just match up the codes, folks. This is the right oil filter for this vehicle. 06L115562. It's a piece of cake. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew that cap and take it out. This while I'm here. This cap is super tight. Okay? And if they didn't lube the O-ring that goes on there, actually it's more of a gasket. If they didn't lube that, it's going to be even tighter. Make sure this is on here properly. Make sure your wrench and a breaker bar wouldn't be a bad idea if you want to use a breaker bar instead of a ratchet. Make sure you apply the pressure evenly. Keep your wrench level, straight. Make sure you're not twisting the cap or twisting the socket here and getting it in an angle, because you're going to have to apply a great deal of pressure. I actually used 2 hands to pull that. One to hold the cap straight and make sure everything was lined up straight, and the other one to pull on the ratchet. It takes a great amount of pressure to do that. Make sure you're going in the proper direction. And how's that go? Just like the old days, loosey lefty, righty tighty, right? Loosey lefty. You're going to do it the same way you do anything else. Okay? And you're just going to unscrew that. It's going to come right up. Once it gets loose enough, you can just pop this off. Pop your little socket thing there off. And this is going to come right up. Just unscrews. You see all kinds of stuff on the internet about oil flowing all over the place and big messes and warnings, and guess what? Not with this engine, not with this year, not with this model. Alright? You're just going to gently lift that right up. Okay? Now there's a little post in there, a little rod that goes with this. Comes right out of the bottom there. You see that? So just give that a minute to drain, or you will make a mess. Let some of that out. and then just lift that out to a safe spot. Alright? And then you can pick that up and you can move that to anywhere you want. So much for my little wet spot there. I'll have to redo that. I'm going to go clean up just a tad bit of oil that I got on the edge there. And be very careful if you have to clean that up. Make sure you're not getting debris inside that housing. Whoever done an oil change before knows that it doesn't always go according to exactly as planned. I did get just a smidgen of oil down between the housing and the engine. Well, it's too tight down there. I'm not going to try and get that out. Might smoke a little when I start it. Probably what I'll end up doing is I'll get some engine degreaser, just give a little squirt down there after I get all this put back together, and that will clean it right out of there. Not a big deal. And it was just a smidgen, not a whole puddle. Okay, so don't sweat that. Now I got another towel up here because I'm always prepared. So this was the housing we took out with the filter in it. And you say, well, what the heck was that? Well, this is what it was. You got this little rod here. This is part of the housing. Okay. Now the filter, what you're going to do is you're just going to pull that. It's going to separate from the inside of the cap. Now this would probably be easier with two hands, except one hand is holding the camera. So let's see if I can do this with one. This is just a little bit tight. It will just pop right out once you get it. Two hands. It'd be better to do two hands. Grab the housing, the cap with one and the filter with the other, and pull. And don't pull on the rod. Just leave the rod where it is. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Come on. Oh, there, I got it. It just popped free. All right. So take the old filter out. Here's the old filter. Looks a lot like the new filter, except it is seriously covered with oil. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to clean up the housing a little bit on the outside, see what's going on the inside just a little bit, make sure I don't leave any debris inside, and then I'm going to pop the new filter in. So again, I put some clean oil on a clean shop towel, okay, and the reason for that is we've got the O-ring here. Let me get the filter out of my way. We've got the O-ring here. As soon as I can get it out of here. It's in the box. I'm trying to do it one-handed, and okay, there we go. So we've got this little O-ring. This goes around the housing, okay, and you want to put this on before you put the filter in. Okay, so you need to get some oil on that so it's not dry. If you put it in and it's dry, your O-ring could end up sticking to the housing or sticking to your cap or both, and you'll end up breaking your cap trying to get it off during an oil change. So just get some clean oil on here so it's not dry. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put that O-ring on the cap here. Once I get some oil on there, it goes on the cap all the way. You put it all the way down to the, it's trying to roll away on me here, all the way down to the last thread. So it goes on all the way down and then stops right here where the last thread is. So put it onto there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the filter, and the new filter goes right over this rod. You slide it right down over that and then pop it into place. And I'll do that in just a minute. So first I'm going to finish getting some oil on the ring. I'm going to put it on the housing. Put the O-ring on the housing. Now what you want to be sure of is that you have this down past the last thread. This will try to twist as you're putting it on. It's going to try and twist this way. So it's going to be a little bit stubborn, but what I found is if you get a piece of it, get your fingers under it, and then just kind of go around, and it'll start to untwist. It takes a little bit of work. But you don't want to have this twisted. If this is twisted when you put it on, it's not going to be a tight seal. It could snap later, could break later, could leak right away. So you want to have this on, you want to have it on proper, and you can see that it actually is down past the last thread most of the way around, except where the thread comes all the way down to meet the seal. Alright, so this is on flush. If you look right here, this little stop right here for it, it's flush against the stop all the way, and it's not twisted. So make sure you get that. It's a little bit of work, Make sure you get it right. Then what you do is take the new oil filter. You take the new oil filter. It's the same on both ends. Okay. You take this, slide it over that stem that was in there. Get it in there. Wiggle it a little bit if you have to. Don't force it until you get it almost all the way in. When you see it's down like this, it's going to pop a little bit when you push it in. It should be a little bit difficult to pull out. Not that you want to pull it out, but it's going to pop just a wee bit. There you go. So you just give it a little pop, and it's going to stop there. Now this stem wiggles around here. This stem actually has a seal on the end of it. There's an O-ring. There's an O-ring on the end of this. You're going to push this down a little bit gently. This has a slotted end to it. You're going to get it in that hole. Make sure it sits in that hole properly, and give it just a little push so it seats properly. This is going to go. You're just going to put it right back inside. Make sure you line up that stem to the hole in the bottom, and slide that down. And I'm going to put the camera down, but I'm just going to make sure that that lines up properly and it gets popped into place. So I've taken the old O-ring off. Where that sits is right here. It's kind of difficult to see, but it goes right around the housing, right, the cap actually. This is the cap. Goes right around the cap right here. Take the old one off. You can just take a screwdriver, something small, and get up underneath it, and then just push it up. So you take that off, put the new one on. Make sure you've oiled it up first, and you get it right here. You see it's down past all the threading. There's a slot right here for it. There's a lip on the top and a lip on the bottom, so it's a fairly well defined slot to fit this O-ring. You want to get that in there. And now I'm going to take this little, going to take the cap with the little rod here. We're going to aim that for the bottom. Okay, make sure it goes in the hole right. Give it a little twist because it should go down, and then the cap will sit right down there, and you just give it a twist, and it should twist right into place. And just twist with your hand until you can't twist anymore. Unless you're Superman, then get your torque wrench. Okay, so get your torque wrench anyway. Now this is actually defined right on the top of the cap, 25.5 Nm. Now you have to convert that to what the actual torque is if you're going to use a torque wrench on this. Okay, recommended you use a torque wrench on that. Just for disclosure, this is a do-it-yourself thing. I'm not legally responsible for anything you decide to do with this. All right, so I'm going to tighten that down, and then we're done. That's the oil filter. So Mike's super oil change 215 Passat. Okay, so that oil drain plug is in there tight. Be prepared. Make sure you get that wrench lined up right. Whatever it is you're using, it's going to be a bear. Let me show you what's supposed to be on there. Little star doohickeys. You see it here? That fits under the drain plug. And you're going to loosen it with that and probably a breaker bar or whatever you can find that is going to give you the leverage you need. T45 is the size for the drain plug. Let me show you what it looks like under there. I've got my pan down here catching the oil. You can see the oil dripping from the pan. I don't have the plug out completely yet. I'm about to pull that out. I wanted you to see that this multi-ribbed pan here is the engine oil pan, and you want to have your drain pan handy because that'll start to leak as soon as you break that drain plug free. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out the rest of the way. Now, I've done lots of oil changes before, and I could feel my way around, and I could come around from the back to loosen that, but not a lot of leverage in there. If you're a first timer, I don't recommend doing this unless you can get the car up on something safe so you can get some space underneath. You know, whether that be jack stands or ramps or whatever. The drain plug is in the rear, so if you do get it up on a bit of an angle, then it will still drain to the rear, and it would certainly do you some good. Trying to do it level surface underneath, that's a tough call. Tough call. Back to Mike's awesome oil change on a Passat. Looking a little disheveled at this point, crawling around underneath the vehicle. I am more than a little dirty. Tough getting under there. That thing is on tight. Okay, so I'm going to show you what it looks like. Here you go. This is the drain plug right here for the oil pan, and this is the washer that's on there with it. And this thing is on seriously tight. Alright, now don't lose these, you need them both. You could replace them both if you purchased them in advance and you knew you were going to replace them both. I'm just going to put this one back on. I may replace it next time. This definitely shows signs of being on there extremely tight. Will it leak? I don't think so. I'll just put it back on tight. If I have a problem, well, oil change sooner than I thought. But I'm pretty confident this will go on and stay on pretty well. And next oil change I'll probably replace this. This is definitely showing signs of being on there. Squeezed tight. Okay, so the oil pan is draining. So the oil is draining into the pan underneath the car, and I'm going to pull out the dipstick just to verify that all the oil is out. Clean it off, put it back in, make sure the dipstick comes back dry. Dipstick comes back dry, I'm in pretty good shape. Now some folks have used a device where you stick the tube down the oil stick tube, and then you pump the oil out the top. You know, if that's your style, sure, go for it. I prefer to take the drain plug out. Any sludge, any buildup, anything that's in the bottom of the pan is going to get pushed out with the force of the oil pushing it out. That's my preference. You do it, it's your car, choose. I've run out of sunlight. I hope you can still see this. The oil has finally come to a slow drip. It actually took quite a while. And I like to get as much out as I can, so I just let it go. Now what I like to do is, before I put the drain plug back in, I want it to be clean around the area where the drain plug is going to seat. So I'm going to take a shop towel and I'm going to wipe a large swath around the opening, being extremely careful that the cloth is clean and I don't force any contaminants into the hole. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to be very careful how I do that. So let's see if I can move the camera and still see what I'm doing here. So just go up here, just wipe gently the swath right around the opening where that drain plug is going to go. Okay, so that should be good for a good contact with the drain plug. Even though there's a little bit of oil coming out, I'm going to put the drain plug in, and once I get it tightened down a little bit, that'll stop the final leaking. But I'm going to get oil on my hand, and that's why I wear gloves. Now I'm doing this by feel. If you're a first timer, this is kind of a difficult thing to do because you might miss the hole and you're going to force contaminants in the hole. So be very careful that you get the drain plug in the right place the first time. It's not an easy thing to do, but I have faith. So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting that in, and then we'll be ready to put some oil in. So here's my drip pan full of oil, which I will pour back into the empty bottles once I put the oil into the car. and I've prepped the new oil already. The manufacturer says 5.2 quarts, so I've got 5 prepared here that are 100% quartz, and then the one that I opened earlier to wet the towel so I can lubricate the O-ring, that's going to be the 0.2. I'll pour some of that in. That way I know I have 5 full quarts plus a little extra. And these are all prepped. I already opened these up, and I already peeled off the aluminum cap that's on there. Took all those out. Be careful not to drop that stuff back into the bottle. You don't want that in the engine. So now I'm going to go over to the engine, remove the filler cap, take that out of the way. I'm going to get my funnel, put my funnel over the oil fill, and put in 5 quarts of oil. Okay, so when everything is done, make sure that you put the oil filler cap back on correctly. Check the oil level in the dipstick, pull it out, wipe it off, put it back in, and check it. If it registers a little high, that's normal because you haven't run the engine yet. So the oil has not gone, there's no oil up in the oil filter. So it might be a little bit high. If it's anywhere in mid-range, acceptable range, that's all right. You run this for half a day or a day, and then check the oil, and if you need to add a little more, add what's necessary based on the dipstick. And you can find in the owner's manual, it will show you the dipstick and when to add and when not to add. You don't want to overfill the oil, so it's better to have too little right now. By too little, I mean a little less than it should be. You put in the 5 quarts plus a little extra. You don't want to overfill it. Put the heat shield back on. That just pops on. You get it lined up in the right places, and then you just push down on it, and that goes on there. You're going to put your splash plate back on the bottom, and you're done. Watching Mike's awesome oil change on a 2015 Passat Wolfsburg Edition 1.8 turbo motor. Hope this was helpful to all you do-it-yourselfers out there, and maybe even some of you more experienced folks who are having trouble finding parts. Enjoy!